How does a Wayfarer song start?
Like in terms of the songwriting process.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it'll typically start one of us, most often myself, but not always, will have a riff or a collection of riffs. Usually kind of with at this point anyway, with some intent in mind. Like when we start an album process, we kind of know where it's going a bit from the start, like what we want to do with the next album or whatever, and we kind of even talk about what all types of songs we're looking to do. And then when we dive into one, it'll be like, okay, here's a riff or a sequence of riffs. Take that to the rehearsal room with everybody. We'll all get to play on it. People will add some ideas. We'll mess around. We'll take it back home and kind of dissect it and take out the parts that work and kick it back and forth like that for a while until it feels like it's what it needs to be.
Now, in terms of coming up with the riffs and trading the riffs back and forth, do you guys write in the rehearsal space, or do you trade riffs online and work out your songs that way?
Both. Yeah, I think it's definitely become more of a hybrid as the years have gone on. We used to do most of the writing in the rehearsal room, but through COVID, of course, there was some kind of remote stuff, and now also we're all pretty busy. I mean, Isaac plays in Blood Incantation. He's on tour a lot with them. We all have various musical and otherwise life projects we're involved in, so we've definitely started to incorporate a bit more of that, and it kind of has its plus sides as well. Like when you are playing together in a room, you will have certain tendencies of what you do, and not to say that that's inherently bad, but it's a good thing to step away sometimes as well and look at the song from a little bit more outside perspective. So anymore we do a bit of both. We will jam through things together, and some things will happen naturally that we definitely keep, but we'll also kind of work on it remotely and do some home recording and kind of kick things around that way.
So you mentioned having an idea of the direction you want a song to go in before you start writing. Do you also have the lyrical concepts in place?
Oftentimes, yeah, at least in a broad stroke kind of way, like because yeah, usually the kind of overarching album concept will be kind of established from the beginning, and then when we're going into a song, it's generally like this is this sort of feel or this kind of story that this is telling, and that because to me that helps to write the riffs even to like know what feeling you're trying to build and whatnot. Kind of helps figure out what types of sounds you're looking for anyway. So while the lyrics won't necessarily be written or like the concept not completely dialed in, there will generally be an idea or a feeling that we're going for from the get-go.
Now, when you say story, do you mean literally narratives? Are you writing stories as in songs in that sense? Are your songs stories?
It's somewhat in between. I think the closest we've ever gotten to straight up narrative would be one of the songs on this album. The second track, Cattle Thief, is the only time we've taken one specific historical event and written a song around it. So yeah, it's somewhere in between. Like there's generally a bit of story, but it's kind of more vague. It's kind of more like a little bit abstractions of things. Like you'll get little bits in the songs that are more narrative, but they're not necessarily this like beginning, middle, end, telling of a story. I think we like to work like that in general. It's all about building a feeling, building a world, putting imagery in one's head, more so than it is about like, telling a direct narrative of events. But there's you sprinkle some of that in to get there. Or at least yeah, we end up doing some vague narrative, but usually we try not to go too literal with it.
So let's talk about the fifth Wayfarer album. It's called American Gothic, and it will be released on the 27th of October through Profound Lore Records in North America and through Century Media Records in Europe. Let's talk about the release first. The label's releasing it. Is this your first album that's a co-release between two different labels?
It is. Yeah, we signed a deal with Century after the release of Romance with Violence, and they did reissue Romance with Violence and The World's Blood everywhere outside of North America. But part of the deal going into this was that the next album would be released by both, which was by our choosing because we've just had a really good relationship with Profound Lore and Chris Bruni, and he's, just taken good care of us and really done everything you would want out of a label partner. So as we were looking to, see what the next step would hold with Century, we still wanted to work with him on the next album as well. So we were glad to be able to work with both labels for this one.
So we spoke about the Americana elements to your sound. Would you say that American Gothic is a little bit of a departure? I mean, would you agree that it's a little bit of a departure from your previous work?
I mean, I don't necessarily view it as a departure. I think each one, kind of does its own thing to a certain extent, like covers a certain concept and an approach. So therefore, to me, it doesn't strike me as necessarily being a departure. I think it's definitely different than the last two albums, but so was the album before that, at least in how we look at it. I look at it kind of as a, honing in on what we're ultimately trying to.
Maybe an evolution?
What's that?
Maybe an evolution or a progression?
Yeah, I would look at it more that way. Yeah, because it's definitely honing in on what we had been building and our sound and what we were trying to do, and kind of just maybe trimming some fat and focusing on certain elements of that. And then, yeah, conceptually, it kind of pulls the lens back a bit, as other albums had as well. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely very much its own effort in our catalog. But yeah, I would say more of an evolution.
And we spoke about your songwriting process and how you have an idea of what you want a song to sound like before you go into it. As far as a lot of the atmospheric and melodic parts of this album, did you really want to hone in on those aspects of your sound?
The atmospheric and melodic, you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for us, it's more kind of specific things that I guess end up, yeah, kind of having pieces of both of those realms. But I don't know. I think it's more of a feeling than a describing things. But we just wanted to have something that's pretty dark and somber and definitely is very world building. But I think the riffing is actually a little bit more direct this time, maybe than the last couple others that might do a bit more meandering and whatnot. This one's a little bit more kind of pushing forward most of the time, and that was on purpose. But it's still, yeah, was hoping to kind of build a vibe with the sound, which I guess is would cross over into atmosphere. And from the melodic side of things, yeah, we definitely wanted to have a little bit more kind of defined melodies and defined lines that would push the listener forward and maybe stick with you a bit.
It does seem like the tendency on this album is towards shorter songs compared to previous albums, or maybe the earliest albums.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, yeah, that was one of the goals. It's just like, not necessarily that the songs have to be shorter, but that we make sure that there's nothing there that doesn't absolutely need to be there. And so, there's still one or two songs that reach kind of the 9-10 minute mark, like we used to do pretty commonly, because those songs kind of felt like they needed all those parts. But beyond that, there were some that we felt, should be a little bit more reined in and focused on a couple main ideas. And so, yeah, I think we did end up with shorter lengths than we typically have before, just by kind of going that direction with it.
When did you start working on the album?
I mean, ideas have been kicking around for some time, but I think we started working on it properly, I'd say late last summer, in terms of actually like getting some riffs recorded and either getting together with everyone or starting to send them around and like meeting up and talking about, what the record was going to be and what we wanted to do with it. Yeah, it was last summer. And then we really hit it hard around the end of this year really, honestly, into the beginning of 2023 is when we really like hunkered down and went all the way into writing mode, and we're, getting together a lot and sending things around a lot and just kind of living inside of it, hammering it out. And then we went to the studio in March and recorded it in Philadelphia.
Who did you record with?
That was Arthur Rizek. He recorded it when he was the producer as well and mixed and mastered.
People probably know Arthur Rizek from his work. I mean, he's worked with a hell of a lot of bands. Everybody from, Creator to Enforced. I think people know him mostly from his work with Power Trip, maybe? I don't know. That seems to be the breakout.
Yeah, I think
Sorry, go ahead.
definitely. Yeah, I think a lot of people probably know him from Power Trip. One of the cool things about Arthur is he, works in a lot of different realms of heavy music. So I think, for some people they know him via Power Trip. For some people they may know him via some of the more kind of like death metal stuff that he has done, or even some other people probably the more kind of closer to mainstream like Code Orange stuff he's worked on before. But yeah, he's pretty multi-talented guy.
And as far as like the range of things that Arthur has worked on, was that part of the appeal of working with him? Is that why you went out to Pennsylvania to record with him?
Absolutely. The driving factor was that we wanted to find somebody who was, a great producer, a great engineer, but somebody who was kind of at the top of their game now, as opposed to going to, a kind of more established name from however many years ago that, you just don't know how invested they still are. And that seemed to be Arthur. And then, yeah, coupled with the fact that while, there was really no point of reference for what we were doing on this album, the elements we were combining on it, it was just pretty clear that he was able to handle a lot of different things and seemed to have a pretty good knack for finding what it is the band was trying to do, and bringing that to its, to fruition. And that definitely turned out to be the case with us.
I'm curious what his approach as an engineer is. Like, would you say that he has a philosophy as far as recording goes?
I mean, yeah, I'm sure he does. I don't think we got the full breakdown on everything he thinks, but he's a musician too, so I think he comes from a place of understanding. Like he plays in Eternal Champion, Summerlands. He's played in a lot of bands for a long time, and so I don't know. He's very much got a one of the guys kind of vibe in the studio, and he's not at all trying to like assert himself or boss anybody around. But when you're kind of looking for guidance, or you're at a part where you're kind of not sure what to do, he's generally has some really great ideas. And so it's a good balance, where it doesn't ever feel like an ego thing, or like you're being pushed in any direction to match like what he would want out of something. But he's attentive, and he has kind of thoughts throughout the process. But yeah, it's a pretty relaxed recording vibe, which is nice.
What would you say he brought to your sound?
He definitely fleshed it out, I'd say, in a way that we were hoping for, which is, it's more clear and more defined, but it doesn't sound synthetic, because in this day and age there are plenty of engineers and producers that are very good at making things very clear and very kind of pristine, but with that you kind of just lose out on a lot of the organic feeling of it and a lot of the human element. And so I'd say that's what he did the most, is like, make it sound a bit bigger and more defined without losing too much of its identity, which I appreciate.
So to be clear, in terms of the sound of the album, you weren't going for something that was clear and pristine necessarily. You really wanted to be more atmospheric
Kind of. I mean,
or organic, I guess. Yeah.
yeah, or organic, which we definitely had been on the last couple albums. So like in a way we were looking to have it be a bit more defined, but it was very important to us that we didn't sacrifice any of that kind of, natural human element feel. And that's what I feel like he did a really great job on, because it does sound a bit bigger, a bit more in your face than the last couple ones we did, a bit more clear in ways, but it still sounds like us and our tones, and it doesn't sound, all quantized, digital, fixed, which is just great.